Here we go. Um, Now then, on this one, I'm hoping to, let me see. Okie doke. What's up? Okay, I turned off the other ones. I'm on Hangouts now, and we got, yeah. Mm-hmm. I see. Okay, I was thinking of the wrong one, I guess. Okay. Okay, I'm going to email this to you. Okie doke. Boom. Okay. Got it. Okay. Clyde's coming in a second, everybody. I gotta turn this my FaceTime off. There it is. Okay. All right. So now here I'm going to have to open up, I guess, something else so I can see the comments. The way the Hangouts works, you got to have two things going, so it's sort of weird. So let me see if I can do that, and then I can respond to your comments. Let me see. Oh boy. Oh wait a minute. I think I know. Okay.
Hey, Bill.
Oh hi. Okay, great. Let me see. I'm trying to find out whether I can join. Uh, okay, let's see. Okay, good. All right, Clyde, can you see the all of the
Live stream
people?
comments? I got them.
Okay. All right. All right. So, Clyde, I'm going to let you sort of take the lead on this one right now, and I'll just listen for a while.
Okay, guys. And real quick, Bill also talks about negotiating strategies with dealers. And sometimes, of course, I'm known as the Wrangler. I'm known as the Crypt Keeper. And I kind of my forte, if anything else, is dealing with individual sellers as well. That could be eBay, that could be Craigslist, that could be from a number of places. Of course, nothing says luxury watch transaction like two armed people in an alley behind a Starbucks.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, what do you think of the new watch?
Oh, that's a nice looking watch.
Hebdo Demari?
I got one of the people on the comments. God. One of the people on the comments. Let me see if I can find what it is. I can tell you what the exact pronunciation is. So go ahead.
Well, and like I said, so actually I found this one off eBay, and it was from an individual. But I was actually able to figure out that this was the chief financial officer of a multinational corporation with offices in several countries. So I kind of felt it wasn't going to be a switch and bait or anything or a scam. And quite frankly, it was just a collector wanting to churn his collection a little bit. So sometimes if something seems too good to be true, a lot of times it is, but every once in a while it's not. So I think this guy literally is one of those types of guys that wears like a $9,000 suit. So squeezing every penny out of a watch he's trying to divest himself of is not his biggest priority. Now, also, of course, do the usual things out. Check them out on eBay. See what kind of transactions do they have? What kind of feedback do they have? How long have they been doing it? Also look at the individual transactions. It's possible to rack up a really good score on eBay and just buy a bunch of $5 and $10 items. Make sure that they're a decent seller. Make sure that they sell similar watches. Also, go ahead.
Oh, I got the name of it, the correct pronunciation. This is from one of the subscribers over on Watch Art Sci. It's Abdo-Mader. That's how you pronounce it. Abdo-Mader.
Abdo-Mader. So the H is silent. Like Henri.
You're talking to the worst French-speaking person imaginable. I love French. I love all languages. I'm just terrible at them because I have such crummy hearing.
I'm speaking to the only person on the live stream wearing a beret. I'd like to point that out.
Well, the beret, I was hoping it would help me with my French, but it's no such luck.
All right. Now, of course, it's kind of hard. I'm on two screens. I'm only on one screen here, so I can't really interact with you directly except via voice and look at the live stream comments at the same time. Now, and also sometimes with eBay, it helps to just simply look under make an offer. It's possible to go through and, some auctions, of course, everyone knows about the time-honored tradition of sniping. An auction that it looks like it's fairly quiet and literally have everything typed in and being ready to go and hit the button like 10 seconds still and try to snatch it out from somebody else. Figure out the maximum price you want to pay for it and be ready to go. Another option is to make offers if for the buy it. A lot of times if they have buy it now prices, they also have make an offer. And literally I'm not going to go into the details about this one, but let's just say I'm quite satisfied with what I paid for it.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with an individual on eBay, and it took me months to get it. I kept he had it up there for a while, and I was noticing that nobody was buying it, and it was a watch I wanted, but I didn't want to pay a lot of money for it. And I had a certain amount that I was going to pay, and so I put, I offered that, and it was basically said, "No, that's way too low." And so this was over a period of months, and so I just waited and waited and waited, and finally he said, "Well, if you want it that much, I'll sell it to you for that." So I was very fortunate, and I tell you, it was an individual, and he lived in New York City, and I had, I didn't know if it was a bag lady with a shopping cart on the other end, and that was probably a chance that I was taking a chance with that one. It wasn't. I don't know. I suppose a bag lady with a shopping bag versus a Swiss bank. I'll take the lady with a shopping bag. So we're given some of the ethics of the Swiss accounting.
Now I'm also looking at the live stream comments, and there's like 25 people saying Hebdomadaire, Hebdomadaire. All right, got it. I'll try to remember that. Je suis redneck. Now, and something else, and also an uneducated seller can either be your worst enemy or your best friend.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I've gotten good deals on people that didn't do their homework, from people who didn't do their homework. And that's why it's important, I think, Clyde and I both agree, is doing your homework sounds like, oh, that sounds like work. And, but it's not. I mean, it's the kind of stuff, if you're interested in watches and you're interested in your money, you should want to know how you're going to spend it. It just blows my mind. You know, before I spend $100 on something that's not a watch, I will do all kinds of research, you know, then go out and buy a $20,000 watch, you know, with my fingers crossed. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, and the Speedmaster question, I know I was really jumping on and doing a lot of, on the keyboard, but the thing is, they're locally here. There was someone selling, here's a Speedmaster Moonwatch, and it's a 321. It's a pre-moon, and it's a dot over 90. And I want at least $6,000 for it. And I'm like, oh God, no, son, that's not no. You got it wrong. You are wrong. Here's what a Dawn looks like. Yours doesn't. Yours is an early edition 861. It's a great watch. I'm interested in it, but I'm not going to pay you no $6,000 or $7,000 for it. So look in the back and see what the reference number is, and they're like, oh, yeah, right. And so I was able to sometimes it depends on the person. If they're a complete idiot, the last thing you want to do is educate them about that. Now, if they're uneducated and they're selling it too cheap, keep your mouth shut.
You know, that's sometimes what the discretion's the better part of valor. Almost always in buying and selling watches. That's something else too. Is that I ended up keep coming back to is that some of these in your face, you know, that kind of, I'm a tough negotiator and I'm not going to take this, you know, guff from you. And, you know, I know it's really worse. Don't do that because, you know, a lot of things, ask yourself, if somebody's really nasty to you, are you going to give them a break? Probably not as likely as someone who is civil with you. Don't ever give them your bottom line. In other words, when you go in and you start a negotiation, start with something that is lower than you're willing to go eventually. And
but not insulting, but not insultingly low.
Yeah, not stupid low. I mean, this is you can figure roughly knock off about a third. Okay. And sometimes you can do a lot more than that. If I say this with a feeling of guilt because I've done it myself. I'll see a watch and I know I shouldn't get it. All right, I got bills to pay too, and well, if I put in something really low, they'll never take it, but just for the fun of it, and bam, they take it.
That's like,
I got a great deal. But I'm old man. Now what am I going to do? You know, how am I going to pay the rent? Oh,
honey, let's go to Sam's Club and get some mac and cheese. A lot of mac and cheese. Yeah, we've all been there. It's just like,
yeah.
But also, like I said, and if an uneducated seller selling for way under, you don't want to be too anxious about it as well. It's just like, oh, are you sure? Is that your best offer? Can you do any better on that? Oh no, I'm needing $5,000 for this old Amiga. Oh, all right. I think it's a little high, but I really love the watch.
Right. I'll just say okay.
Yeah. And sometimes though, you throw an offer out, and you can. And again, there's always a knowledge gap. Now, if you're dealing with, as you pointed out, someone who's a watch dealer, that's their business. They know the value of those watches better than you probably ever will. The only thing you can hope for really is not to lose too much skin or hope that they need some bills to pay.
Yeah, there's something else too. If you watch a watch for sale and it hasn't been moving, that's a really good time. Now, you know, I've got no. Well, this sort of relates to another thing. Patience. Patience is incredibly strong. If you have patience and the other guy doesn't, you'll win every time. Every time.
Sorry, still dealing with that upper respiratory. Something else to deal with is, and sometimes some with individuals, sometimes the uneducated seller with the bad pictures and everything else, those can be diamonds in the rough. For instance, one of the things I received, the Rolex 1530. It's the one that they only made 1,500 of, and it's a predecessor to the Oyster Quartz. Incredibly, incredibly rare. And it was a couple of numbnuts inherited it and put it up and took the awfulest, blurriest, out of focus picture on it. And of course, I'm looking at that, and when I'm going through and scanning stuff, my mind automatically says, screw this. Until someone else pointed out, hey, Clyde, wasn't that a 1530? Click, click, click. Oh, yeah. And so sometimes taking a second look what everyone else has glossed over can help. Sometimes you have a seller that is tough to deal with or tough to negotiate with. I had like a Submariner 2 line, and the guy was way off in the sticks. And he was, of course, anything else, always authenticate. Always authenticate. Always authenticate. I don't care if you bought that watch from the Pope. Authenticate it.
Yeah, that's
but this
true.
guy was really,
especially with Rolexes and that kind of thing. There's some other kinds that they don't seem to bother with in terms of making fake. They're just not worth it because they lose so much value. But still, the whole process is that if you get a watch, and that's when you really can authenticate it, and that becomes a little problematic, doesn't it?
Oh, it can be. Now, the one guy though, he was working at a mid-level management, and he's at some big housing development that was being built. So he's literally tied to his job. But I went down there, and literally I figured there's no way I'm going to drag him off, drive to an authorized dealer or watchsmith for 30 minutes. But on the other hand, he had box and papers. The papers matched what was on the watch. Legit reason for selling it. Basically, he bought a Yachtmaster and just never wore the Submariner anymore. He thought it was too plain. And under those circumstances, I went through and I got it, like, this was a couple of years back, but a two-line Submariner no date for a really, really good price. And just simply that I was willing to put in the extra time. I mean, people, you're also talking about like making it seem like work. Time equals money. And if you don't put in the extra time, you're going to spend the extra money. And I'd rather spend the time.
Yeah, no, really, if you have more time than money, it's always a good idea. If you have lots and lots of money, and if the negotiation process, if you can make so much more money than you'd save on a negotiation or in research, then yeah, that makes sense. But at least most of us, other than Clyde, aren't that rich. I mean, we've got to, we have to get by. So yeah, but the thing is like I said, is that as far as the research is concerned, I don't know. It's sort of like a shark. A shark can't stop moving.
Right.
A good watch collector can't stop learning more and more about watches, because I don't care how much you know, there's always a whole lot more to learn. And to me, that's why I collect watches, because it's a lot of fun, because it's sort of an inexhaustible source of interest, of fun things to do. And so it's not like ditch digging research. It's like having fun.
Right.
When your wife comes in, what are you doing? Instead of having a bunch of lingerie models on the screen, I got watches. I think she'd rather say a little of the other.
Well, probably the break. Sorry. Anyway, but also one of the things that you pointed out to your video this morning was take advantage of your peeps, take advantage of your friends in the community. have 1,000 eyes looking for you. But sometimes one of the best sources could be someone locally that you know, that you respect, that you trust. And a lot of times, just like the rest of us, they're wanting to. It's like, well, I really want this, but I really need to sell this quickly to get it. And if what they're holding is something you want, sometimes you can really find some really good deals that way as well. And also, it's
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Both on buying and selling. If you're saying, "Hey, I've got this Rolex day date that is I've sort of outgrown, and I want to get a sub, or I want to get a I don't know whatever else Rolex collectors collect. They don't collect enough Cellini Princes, but that's another story.
no,
The 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 yeah, no, this is the communication, and there are different places to do it. The problem is, and especially with the internet, I don't know, I can't see the comments right now, but the I guess the question I have has anybody been burned by someone? There's something I I've got a sense that turns on when something's wrong with a deal, and I haven't been burned yet. But that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. There was one deal, and some guy in Australia, there was something just wrong about it. Um, Asking questions. One of the things I think is important. This happened to me. There's a certain movement that I wanted that's in a certain series of watches. It's called a Jadot 736, and then there's also called a La Joux Pereira 736. I think
mhm,
I've mentioned this before. Okay, well, there was one, I think it was either I think it's a Concorde. Concorde is one of the watches that use that movement. So I contacted the guy was in France, and he was a very nice guy. He recognized me as a fellow Frenchman, I'm sure. Anyway, I said, I'd really like to see the movement in it, because if it had a round movement, it wasn't what I wanted, and if it had a rectangular movement, that was definitely the one that I was after. And so the guy, he said, "Well, I have to go and go to get it open, because the guy had to go to his watch store or something. They're going to open it for him." And he did, and he took a picture of it and he emailed it to me. And I said, I was very grateful to him, but it was like the wrong one. And so if you haven't, and especially seeing the movement is extremely important. I once bought a watch and they thought one movement was in it, but they weren't sure. And when I got it, there was another movement in it that was a relatively cheap movement, and I wasn't too happy about that. But that's a lesson learned. You want to see what movement's in there, because if somebody sticks a cheap movement in, you're paying a lot of money for it. Or let's take with a Rolex. Somebody gets a broken Rolex, and they can stick something in there to make the hands go around. Not that hard.
that's true. That's why I always have it authenticated. Now, and also, you almost have to go to a watchsmith, because at least over here in my part of the flyover states, the ADs don't want to crack the case anymore and look in the back. So it's just like, of course, on the other hand, it's just like, I guess, why would they want to spend a lot of time into it? Now, here's the funny part: the rare birds are so rare they haven't even been copied.
Yes, yes, I agree. Well, because they're not worth it. I mean, if you're going to make phony watches, you can get a mold for 1,000 Rolex cases of one type or another, and just start throwing in some cheap movement, and then doll it up with a dial that matches a Rolex dial. Not that hard. In fact, it's incredibly easy. Uh, Again, this is from the perspective of a pretentious watchmaker.
Right. Now, there's a question by Rohit Roth. Question: what if the seller on Chrono 24 lives in another country, has a strict no return policy, but the watch is a steal? Would you buy it, and how would you go authenticating it? Well, okay. Well, number one, it depends what country. Some countries like Russia, mm, boy, if of course, the old saying is, if it sounds too good to be true. But the thing is, you'd have to buy it with a credit card, and if that's the case, you would have it authenticated locally, and then hope like hell that you could dispute it with a credit card or with Chrono 24. I think, but actually, I think Chrono 24 does allow for it's almost like an escrow service or something like that. Once you check back and make sure,
Yeah, there's some things I've almost done. Okay, there was a deal with a seller, a legitimate seller in Ukraine, and in
ooh,
the relationships between Ukraine and Russia, while they look pretty bad right now, I'm sure the Russians move a lot of their stuff through Ukraine, who we do deal with. And so the watch he had was a good price, and it was a legitimate watch. And I checked out the place, and they were a legitimate dealer. But I said, well, he said, well, we're going to send it by courier. And I said, great, that's fine. I said, because what I assumed was that they had a store in New York City, and
mhm.
I'd take the train over to New York and pick it up. I said, well, it's not exactly a courier; it's an airline stewardess. And so apparently they had airline stewardesses more or less smuggling them into the country. And I was supposed to go over there and meet the airline stewardess out at some hotel out by JFK Airport. I told a bunch of people about it, and we thought, man, that would be fun. We'll get out there with Natasha and Boris Badenov. We'll
Oh, okay.
but it was tempting. It really was, and
The
they
dealer
never
or the
been able to
stewardess?
pull it off. Well, the thing of it was that it was clear what they're doing. I mean, there were a number of people in the past who've been bringing up from Colombia. Every flight would have some emeralds on it that was in the pilot's or the stew's purse, and they were doing a lot of that. And it would make sense that they'd put it on watches and do the same thing. Now,
You hope it was only put in their purse, and we'll just leave it at that.
yeah. Anyway, I passed. I was awfully tempted, though. I mean, I'd go over there with a bunch of friends who are equally irresponsible, and you know, but it was. I finally passed on it. They ended up selling the watch, so maybe somebody else got it. But they're yeah. It's like Clyde said. If a deal is too good to be true, it probably is. And you don't want to get involved in anything that's not legal because you can get in serious trouble and you end up with a criminal record, and your name is on. You could even lose your passport. There's all kinds of things that can happen to you. So that's one thing that I have avoided. On the other hand, if you have a friend, let's say you got a friend in
Jesus.
Germany, and they're coming over
Oh,
to the U.S. to visit you, and you want to watch, let's say from Glashütte Original or something like that, and they have the watch, and then they're going to simply put it on their wrist and come in through customs and so forth. And you can. That's one way to do it. The biggest problem of getting into the country, it's funny. It's not illegal, but it's weird. This is a gator strap, okay? Perfectly legal in the U.S. The problem is that there's something called a CITES form, CITES, and they need that. But for some reason, when they sell it to individuals, they don't have them. Dealers, on the other hand, when a dealer gets a watch, there'll be a big thing on the outside that'll say CITES. And so what happens, and this is I would recommend anybody who buys something overseas, if it's going to have a gator strap, do one of two things. Say, look, would you mind putting on a leather strap instead of a gator strap? That's one thing. The other thing is that, say, just send them separately, and then if they get stopped by customs, they're just getting a strap, and you're not out. Most people I know who do a lot of overseas individually, not businesses, do it that way. Some people I know, I've shipped the watch. They said, look, take it to the boutique in New York, give it to them, and they'll ship it through their B2B kind of thing back to Switzerland for something. So I've done that too. But again, avoid anything that's illegal.
Mm. And so, like I said, so also sometimes you can just simply advertise where you're at locally and just say, I'm looking for blank, and see if someone contacts you. Sometimes you get lucky that way.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I haven't done, I've seen a lot of the thing, I think Don mentioned it, about there are a lot of sites where individuals sell to each other. That would be a little scary for me. It just would be. I mean, I'm not,
You mean like Craigslist or something?
Like what?
Craigslist?
Not familiar with that one.
You've never heard of Craigslist?
Oh,
Seriously.
Craigslist.
Yeah, I was going to say.
No, Craigslist is not. I wouldn't do anything with Craigslist. I was thinking more of. Oh God, I'm trying to think of what. There's a place, and I think it's through Watch Pro somehow.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of things there that people are selling and so forth. There's a lot of good choices and good prices.
Watch Recon?
That might be it. I just it's like it's something. It depends on how much chances you want to take, and certain things I don't want to take any chances.
Well, and like I said, sometimes with Craigslist, it's all if have your watchsmith have your AD on speed dial, but sometimes you can. Sometimes I've had really good luck there so far. I've had a couple in there.
Yeah, I know you can. I know that's true. There's a house across the street from me, and the guy who owned it decided to rent it. And the first guy that showed up who was a renter for the house, found out that he had found it on Craigslist and found out that it was a fraudulent set. The guy had come up and changed the locks and done some things like that. Mm-hmm. The good thing about it was that the guy who owned the house got fed up with it and sold it, which is much nicer to have as in terms of the general neighborhood. The point being that after that happened, I was very nervous about Craigslist. And there are other things you can get on Craigslist that you might have to get a shot of penicillin for. So not the go-to place for me.
Gotcha. Well, that's why you make sure the watch is waterproof and you clean it first. But like I said, always important to have. I mean, pawn shops also something else. Believe it or not.
Pawn shops can be really good, and I'll tell you why. If you find a watch, they're not going to know as much about the watch as a watch seller or a jewelry store. I went into a pawn shop locally, and they just had the stuff they had in there was such junk that it was no interest to me. But there was one watch I got a really good watch that was a watch store dash pawn shop, and the watch I got, the guy who brought it in didn't know very much about watches. I think he inherited it and decided he's going to make money with it, so he takes it to a pawn shop. They probably gave him maybe $1,000, $1,500, and turned around and sold it to me for around $4,000. And on Chrono 24, they're listed at $10,000. So it's a matter of knowing, with pawn shop.
And of course,
That's a tactic.
and ask question. And when you do that, though, there's a couple out by my old office location that were great. But the thing is, they also had a secret backdoor deal with the used Rolex dealer in my part of the state. So what would happen? He'd authenticate the pawns for free, and he'd write something, the model and everything else on a card, and they'd take it back and they'd say, "Yep, Charlie authenticated it." And then the quid pro quo for the watch guy was if they wanted to sell the watch, they would send them to him. So authentication, so I would look and say, well, where's the card from Charlie? In other words, and that's also your way of saying, I'm not a schmuck. But
another thing you could go ahead, Clyde.
The other thing you could do is also, if you're not absolutely positively 100% sure, if you think you're dealing with a couple of numbnuts, then of course you buy with a credit card and get buyer protection that way. If you're absolutely sure about if it's the authentication, then you go in with cash and just, cash, money talks.
Yeah, one other thing is that when I get a watch, a really expensive one, a really good one, and it has no papers or no nothing, I send it in to the manufacturer for servicing. And then what you have is that first of all, you have your watch on record as being serviced. And this can be expensive, especially with expensive watches. This one, for example, is FP Journe, and I had it sent to the American Service Center in Florida, and they went through and they overhauled it and they did all of this good stuff to it. And so it's on record. And of course, if it wasn't real, I'd know really. I mean, if there was any problem with it. And so I did that with both of my watches, and it's expensive. It's very expensive. But I saved so much on the watch, and now I've got a 0 point for both of my FP Journes, and that way I don't have to worry about it. And if somebody has, when I sell it, I can say, okay, here was the service, and here's a record for it. Here's what was done, and here's who did it.
You can also get an insurance verification from the AD. Well, I need this appraised for insurance purposes. And what they'll do is, of course, they won't verify a watch, but if they do an insurance verification or an insurance appraisal, they have to authenticate the watch to do that. And sometimes, if you're sure about the, if it's a good condition, have the local guy check it out first. Does it really need a service? No, it's good. Then instead of taking in for a service, you get service paperwork from an AD or from a service center. They'll just send you something, and this is from the local AD for that brand that basically states the model number, states the reference number, and everything else. And that can be another good way to get paperwork.
There was for my Patek Philippe, they have something. If you contact Patek Philippe through their webpage, they'll ask you to provide a certain set of photographs and descriptions and so forth, and then send that in to have it authenticated. And I think it was 125 Swiss francs, and that was worth it. And so they sent me this thing back, and they had all of this detail about my watch, and that was nice to have. And especially for a really good but vintage watch that you want authenticated, you can do it. Any Patek Philippe has that service. Vacheron Constantin is a little different, and I think they're really expensive. And some of the other ones do too. And like I said, with FP Journe, I took it to the boutique in New York. They took a look at it. The first thing they did, they found out whether it was stolen or not, and it wasn't. And then the next thing they did was, the ones I didn't have papers for, they took it downstairs in their basement. God knows what's down there. and like I said, a couple of weeks later, I got all of these authentication papers, both in French and English.
Well, the funny part is here locally, we're talking about pawn shops. Pawn shops can be the safest place to buy a watch when it comes to that because the local pawn shops here. There's like an intranet that they're connected into each other and to local law enforcement. So a lot of times, someone came in on this day and pawned, uh, a Parmigiani Fleurier, Calpa Hebdo Madeira.
Hebdomadaire.
Okay, I said Hebdo Madeira.
Yeah.
For this much, and here's the reference, here's the serial number. And so a lot of times if there's anything stolen, if someone comes in with a stolen items report, they'll say, "Yep, got it right there." They'll go back and nail the person doing it that way. So that sometimes because of that, that's the best way to pawn shops is an even better way to make sure, since they're tied in, the police know the criminal element, their habits and customs. That's one of the best ways to make sure your watch is not stolen is from a pawn shop, even more than a used dealer, unbelievably enough. And also, you're talking about the same thing. Pawn shops, um, they want to make a profit, but the overwhelming priority is to at least get the pawn money back for it, but the money that they've loaned and the interest. So sometimes, they've got like a Rolex sitting there, or a nice Omega, or a T or whatever. The longer it's sitting there, the more they'll negotiate. When it's officially pawned or repossessed by the pawnbroker, they act like a jewelry store. If that watch sits there long enough, they're going to act like a pawnbroker.
Yeah, no, that's if you can find a good watch in a pawn shop, you can get some really good deals on it there. Hey, listen, we're about out of time, and we ended up with a double one because it was my fault. I didn't set things up right. Thanks everybody for coming. I'll be able to look at the comments later, and let's end with looking at the new watch that Clyde has. Say something, Clyde.
Oh, hey guys. Really, 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 really liking this. I have to admit. Nice shape, horned lug. Don't make the art. I know the jokes everyone's making about horned lugs. Trust me, I've thought of that already. Love the depth of movement. Oh my God, it winds like butter. And look at that movement. Geneva seals. And considering, I'm not going to say how much I got this for because, I like to act like I have class and stuff like that. But literally, I get this for less than I could get a Rolex Steel Sports for. That's right. I got this high horology for sub money.
Okay. Until next week, adios, and off to go watch football games. Take care.